Hey there, listener. Corey Andrew Powell here, and I'm excited to share that Motivational Mondays is now sponsored by BetterHelp. Feeling stressed or anxious? Well, BetterHelp brings you online therapy that's convenient and affordable. NSLS members get 50% off your first month of BetterHelp when you sign up at betterhelp.com/NSLS or click the link in the show notes. Start your journey to better mental health today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Motivational Mondays, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories and powerful insights to kick off your week. And as we honor Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we are privileged to have a very special guest with us today, Marsha Perry, who is not only a military veteran where she served as a combat medic in the National Guard, but she's also a seasoned human resources professional as well. But most impressively to me, she's a resilient survivor of an unexpected cancer diagnosis. And so her journey has turned into a mission to remind all of us and encourage people to get their preventive cancer screenings. Marsha, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, me too. So, we can't go forward without full transparency that, first of all, Marsha and I are friends going back a long way, so much so that when we had dinner a few years back, she told me that I was one of her first friends when she and her family moved here from Jamaica when we were little kids. I had no idea. So it's an honor to still be in your life and to have you here on the show. I mean it.
Thank you.
You got it. You got it. So Marsha, let's talk a little bit about the story. I was so amazed because you reached out to me and you were like, hey, I have a story to tell you. I'm not sure if you think it'll be something your guest would want to hear. And of course, I jumped at the opportunity. But I want to just first begin a little bit about your background, because we are also an academic podcast. And so you have a really nice career profile as well. So beginning with that, tell us about your background and how you ended up working in human resources.
Well, it's interesting. Folks who've been in human resources for a while, we didn't pick it. We kind of fell into it. And so that kind of is my story as well. I had worked for a nonprofit organization doing a bunch of everything, and some of it was human resources stuff. Then I did IT for 4 years, and I was looking for a job that would mix all of the things that I knew how to do, the HR stuff, the IT stuff. And I looked for an HRS position. And when I went in to interview, the VP, she said, my benefits administrator is leaving. Would you be interested? And I was like, sure, I'm always up for a challenge. And I got the job and I loved it. And so benefits is actually my passion. So now in HR, I oversee benefits, compensation, and HRIS systems. And I've been doing it for over 20 years, many, many different industries. And I love it because I get to be an advocate for employees and a representative of the organization. So I get to sit on the fence and balance that.
Wow, I love that, because this is an added bonus for us to even hear some of the nuances of that career, because when we talk to a lot of our members and people who are listening who are kind of in that mind space of career, where do I go? What do I want to do in life, especially college age audience, a career in human resources always seems very like you're just someone who's hiring the people and then going back to your cubicle or something. But, you make it sound a lot more fulfilling and rewarding than that, which I love.
It is. I love what I do. That's
wonderful. And then you not end up, that's what you're doing now. But prior to that, you were in the military. And now I didn't know that. That's why I confirmed it before we recorded today. I said, I believe you were in the military. I didn't realize a combat medic. So, wow. So what did that do for you as far as preparing you for the world as well?
Honestly, it was great. So did 1 year of college and then, needed money for school. So joined the military, and that was the MOS, or the job that I had. And I also became a nationally registered EMT. So had that alongside that as well. So I was in for 8 years. And for me, it actually helps me in my profession in the benefits realm, because I understand a lot of the medical terminology and am able to look at things not just from the side of someone who is, just a regular user. I understand the details and the nuances of the medical terminology. So it is very helpful.
And I'm just going to say before we move on, and I think I told you this when we did have dinner together a while back. I remember when we were little, you could always find Marsha in fact, the corner reading a book. Like the kids would be doing whatever they're doing. She might join you later to play, but she has a couple of books to read first. And so I'm so not even surprised that you have that kind of mind when you're gathering all this data and information, medical, people, human resources skills. Just amazing that it culminates to this one career path for you. And that's a great lesson for everyone. Take all the things that you know and things you're good at, things that are your passions, and see where that can take you professionally. And Marsha is a really great example of that. Now, the next conversation, of course, is what you had contacted me about a few weeks ago. You were diagnosed with cancer. Totally surprising. And the reason why I said unexpected is because usually it is unexpected, but in some cases they have symptoms, they know something's off, but you said that wasn't the case with you. So share with us how you found your situation and how you dealt with it.
So for me, and this is a little different for me because I'm not someone who lives out loud. So, but as you said, this is important for me to tell the story. So I get my regular mammograms, over the age of 40, get my regular mammograms in December. So I went in December, they took my mammogram and they called me back and they said, we need more pictures. And I'm like, all right, I have dense breasts, it's fine. I'll come back. And they said, we see some calcifications, but we want to watch it for 6 months. Come back in 6 months and we'll take a picture to see if it's anything. So in May, I went back, another mammogram. And at that point, they were like, yeah, you need a biopsy because there's been significant growth since December. And, in my story, I have a couple superheroes. My OBGYN, she's one. She saw that information in the portal and she called me that night after hours. She was like, I need you to go see this guy because this is who I would go to if it's me. So set me up with the doctor and he did the biopsy, stereotactic biopsy. So a couple things that, I find to be very important. All of my doctors use the latest and greatest techniques. So it wasn't just a biopsy where I'm laying on my back. This is you're on a table and, breast is hanging through the hole and the doctor's working underneath. They lift you up almost like you're a car on a lift, right? But it's a great, great technology because it's computer aided and it actually helps you to get to the, to the specific spot a lot easier than someone who's guessing as to where it would be, and it's clearer than an ultrasound. So they did the stereotactic biopsy and, sent me along my way. And a week later, I went back to his office and he looked at me and he said, you have cancer. And I'm like, whoa. Okay. So what does that mean? How much, all the questions are running through your head, so the doctor did explain that it is breast cancer, the DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ, which is great because it's a non-invasive cancer. So it's encapsulated in the breast, in the milk ducts within the breast. And it's a stage 0, but grade 3. So there are 3 grades to each stage. So I was at the top end of a stage 0. And he said, you've got some options. Option 1, you do a lumpectomy, radiation, and then medication for 5 years. Or option 2, we do a mastectomy. And for stage 0, it's a little radical. So I decided to go with the lumpectomy, radiation, and medication.
Wow. My goodness. I think what we should do is just dissect a little bit of that. When you hear the words, you have cancer, like most of us are familiar with it from what we see on television. That's something you see on TV. What goes through your mind when you hear that from a doctor? Especially, we're young. We're not we think of things that are older people's problems, but we're still in our primes here. So what do you think of when you hear that?
For me, I got into analytical mode. It's like, all right, what do I need to do? And da da da. And then it was, oh my gosh, I have to tell my kids. I have to tell my sister. I have to tell my parents. I'm starting to go through the list of who I need to tell, and then how do I manage their feelings about this, especially when, it's like, all right, I need to call them, when they're home and, so all of that. And it's so funny. I called my sister and I told her, and she said, well, how do you feel? And I said, well, I'm not a fan of the color pink. She said, oh, you're a weirdo. I said, yeah, I know. It's just.
Right. Because you're expected now to wave that everywhere you go.
Right. Pink this, pink that. Which, I'm a supporter. I really am. It's just, I like the color blue. So it's just the most random thing goes through your mind. And, for me, I'm like, all right, does that mean that I'm going to have to, get chemotherapy? Am I going to lose my hair? And thankfully with stage 0, no, I don't have to, do chemotherapy and lose my hair. But there's some other things to it. With the type of cancer that I have, it's an estrogen positive cancer. So basically my body's feeding this thing. And they had to do blood work to see whether I'm pre or postmenopausal, because then that would determine which medication they give me. And fun story, I am premenopausal, nary a hot flash or anything,
wow.
Yet. Yeah. So because of that, they're going to start me on tamoxifen, which is going to stop my estrogen production in my body and actually put me into menopause. So that to me was a little scary because, folks, they have their their stories about what that means. But I can tell you, I've got some amazing friends. I have this one friend, he's been with me along the entire path. And he's like, it may not be so bad for you. It's okay. You'll be fine. You can do this. So it's been not just a matter of me telling folks and making sure that they're okay. I've got the greatest true village of friends and family, who are making sure that I'm okay.
And that's an important part, Marsha, because you mentioned as we began that you're typically not someone, to really share your personal life like that with anyone, on the greater scale, like you're doing now, of course, on a podcast. It's going to be public, which is so admirable. And I thank you so much for doing it. But yeah, you like to kind of keep most of that stuff private and you maybe let a small group of people in. But what I'm hearing from you, which is great, the village analogy, is that letting people in, letting them know what you're going through is actually, people you trust, is really beneficial because you kind of create a support system that I think we all need. That's how we thrive and that's how we survive. So is that sort of what you feel like you've gotten from this network of friends who you have?
Right. And, and the other thing in having this network, so my friend that I mentioned, he actually showed up here at my house. He was like, I need to see you to make sure you're okay. And we were talking for hours. And he looked at me, he said, you haven't eaten. When was the last time you've eaten? You look like you've lost weight. And I thought about it. I was like, oh, I haven't eaten since yesterday afternoon. And so he's the one who recognized that my stress had manifested itself into the fact that I had stopped eating, and I realized I hadn't been eating for a while. And the other thing is also it affected my sleep. Wasn't sleeping either. So the stress subconsciously manifests itself in different ways. So the sleep, and I may be getting ahead of myself, has actually, come back, post surgery, but Well, I'll get there. Yeah.
But listen, that's a really important lesson, though, for all of us to check on your people. Sometimes there's a balance where we don't want to impose. We don't want to feel like we're, getting in someone's way or making matters worse. Or, I think that's sort of a balance we all try to struggle with when we have someone who's going through something. But I say, at least get in their face a little bit and say, hey, are you okay? And let them tell you I'm fine. I don't need that much help right now, but, and then also a person who's going through it, the flip side, try to be receptive to it. I think, Marsha, you and I were speaking before too, that part of the dilemma for you is trying to balance telling everybody that I'm not an invalid. Like, I'm okay. Like, I don't need you to like open the can of something for me. Like, I'm still the same Marsha. Like, I don't need you to handle me with kid gloves while not pushing people away. There's a delicate balance there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's learning how to accept help. That's a new one for me. Because it's like, all right, I need something done. I'll just do it myself.
Right.
But no, I'm being very receptive, with it's actually great. Let me tell you, I love my family. So my son, he's in the military. He's stationed overseas. He's in Europe. And when I told him, he was like, do you need me to come home? I was like, oh, no, sweetie, it's fine. I'll see you at Christmas. And he had talked to family members and they were like, well, your mom said you don't need to come. And he said, well, who's going to stop me? And he called the American Red Cross. He got emergency leave approved. He was here for my surgery. My best friend, she was here for my surgery as well. My daughter came. She was here. When I tell you my house was full, my house was full. The first thing my son did when he got here was he went to the supermarket and did grocery shopping for me. Because he was like, you're supposed to be eating. I'm like, yeah, I know. But, so he filled the refrigerator for me. My friend calls me, have you eaten, all of that. And I'm taking responsibility. I'm making sure I get, my 3 square meals. But the sleeping thing, it was, that's one of those things that'll work itself out in time, because, it's in your head. The other thing that was that happened in the beginning, folks were like, oh my gosh, you need to take all this time off of work. And I was angry and arguing. And I realized 2 things. 1, why am I arguing? Because nobody's going to stop me. And then 2, I realized the reason why I was arguing. I had to figure out the why. Why was I upset about this? And it was because the work is the one thing in my life I can't control. And they were trying to take away the one thing in my life that I could control. Can't control this medical stuff, but I can control work. So work has been a lifesaver for me. It's been a godsend. I work with the most amazing people, the most supportive team. All of them don't know what's going on. They'll know after this.
I'm like, yeah, they used to not know. Right.
They'll know now. But, it was nice to have that normalcy, somewhere where I'm not talking about my diagnosis, where, they're not doing the whole, it's funny, I was telling someone, that whole sick whisper, when you show up, right, I went to the hospital, I had to get blood work done. They asked me the name of the prescribing doctor. I told her, she was like, okay, so let's go this way, and I'm like, why are we whispering at me?
Like, it's okay to be full-throated, Ham.
Right.
People have cancer. It's okay to talk about it. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, I'm just getting some blood work. What's the big deal? So there's that. For me, normalcy is huge. I'm like, look, treat me the same horrible way you were treating me before. Don't treat me differently.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for me. And then there are also a lot of other things that I had to ask. It's like, okay, so I'm going to have this surgery. How big is this incision? And to be honest with you, I didn't care if I looked like Edward Scissorhands at the end, as long as y'all take this thing out.
Right.
So that really didn't matter. But just so you know, my doctor, he's an artist. You cannot tell. He did a really good job.
That's a big part of it too, with the cosmetic, doctors being conscious of that when they're doing surgery, how to maybe minimize the scarring or the visibility of scarring when you have procedures like that. That's good. That's good that he was one of those doctors.
Yeah, he really is. He's to the point. He's direct to the point, and he's a professional with his stuff, and he'll answer whatever question you have. And like I said, he used the best techniques. They put markers in that they inserted and injected in my breast before, so they knew exactly where to look. There were the amount of mammograms and stuff that I've taken. But it's been, they've been really professional and on top of their stuff. I had surgery back in August. I took 2 days off. I had less pain, honestly, with the lumpectomy than I did with the biopsy. The biopsy hurt me more than the actual lumpectomy, which was weird to me. But, it went well. And then the week after, when I went with my kids for the follow-up, doctor said, we got clean margins, so you're good. I last week went and he cleared me post-surgery to start radiation. I met with a radiation oncologist, a medical oncologist. I start radiation, I think, next week. I have to get a CT scan and tattoos tomorrow so they know exactly where to direct the radiation to, but it'll be 5 days a week for 4 weeks.
And that'll complete that chemo session. Radiation, okay. And that'll complete that radiation session. And then after that, they'll make an assessment as to if the cancer has vanished or gone into remission. Like, what is the outcome that they hope to have with that?
It's a constant review of everything. So with me being premenopausal, I'm going to be taking tamoxifen medication, and I'm going to start that this week. So I'm going to be on that for 5 years. So that stops the estrogen production in my body. And then, do the radiation, and then it'll be follow-ups after that, every 6 months, every, more mammograms and checking blood work and all kinds of things like that. So,
okay. So ongoing, that would become your normal routine.
That's my norm. That's my new norm.
Every 6 months or so for the rest of your life to keep monitoring this.
Yes. Hopefully it'll go back to once a year. But yeah, right now that's my new norm.
Okay. Well, listen, this is an important conversation, which is why I'm so happy you're sharing it, because one of the things that you talked about was you wanted other women, and not maybe just women, because men also obviously are impacted by cancer as well. So why was it important to you to actually share your story and be so transparent right now? Because
I had no idea. They teach you to, do your self-breast exams and check for lumps and rashes. I had none of that. This was just my regular diagnostic mammogram. And, that I had my preventive mammogram, and that's where it was caught. And with DCIS, one of the women who work in the office, she said, what this is akin to is, she said, it's like putting salt on watermelon. You can't see it, but it's there. And she said, that's what DCIS is. So there were no warning signs for me. There was nothing. I mean, I'm not, sick. I'm just, living my best life, traveling, everything. And I had no idea, but the growth was so rapid in 6 months that honestly, I believe that if they didn't catch it when I went back in May, like if I missed and said, you know what, I'll put it off, I'll see them in December, I could have had an invasive cancer, which would have led me to having to need chemotherapy or something else. People need to get tested. People need to, get their preventive screenings. Your mammograms are free if you're over the age of 40. So under the Affordable Care Act, what folks used to refer to as Obamacare, preventive screenings are covered at 100%, right? So go and get it done. It doesn't cost you anything. Make sure you get tested. And to your point, with men, 1% of the breast cancer diagnoses in the United States is males, men who have breast cancer. And so if you see a rash, don't think that, I just need to go put some hydrocortisone on it. It might be breast cancer. Get tested. There is a Men's Breast Cancer Week in the United States. It starts the week of October 17th. So there's some awareness out there around that. And I really want folks to please get your testing done. Please get your mammogram. Anytime anyone asks me, so Marsha, what can I do for you? I tell them, please go get your mammogram, get your colonoscopy, get checked. That's what you can do for me. I don't want your story to be worse than mine. I don't want your story to be like mine.
That's amazing. And it's really poignant for me too, because, as a man of a certain age, I just had my first colonoscopy, and since we're sharing, and it is very one of those things where preventive is the key word, because my grandmother passed away of colon cancer that spread to her liver. because it was not caught in time. But typically, had she caught it in time, it would have been very treatable and potentially, something she could have survived. So, with that kind of predisposition in my family, I'm not taking any chances. I went, did the whole thing. And I'm going back for an endoscopy, in the throat to make sure, because my dad had esophageal cancer. So I got to make sure I'm on top of that. But I have to, because, like you just said, because I'm very used to putting things off. And it's easy to go, I'll do this, 6 months later. Cancer can grow rapidly in 6 months. So do not do that. Wow. Amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned a few of the challenges, though, some of the soreness, some of the things that you felt were more painful than the others. But were there any other challenges that you faced during the recovery process when you were kind of, I guess, post-surgery, physically or emotionally? What were you going through?
It was really more, emotional, because there was the fear of the unknown. I don't know what this is going to do for me, or what if they don't get anything? What if they don't have clean margins? And so I have to have more surgery. Mm-hmm. And, also, again, thinking about other people's feelings, like my kids were here, they were strong for me and everything. But it's like, I couldn't imagine if the script was flipped, how I would deal with that. So that was a big one for me. And I think that's part of the reason why my sleep was affected. So that was big for me. Right now, what I'm doing is I am cramming for the test of knowing what I can and can't eat, because there are things that will positively and negatively help the medication that I have to take. So, and as a Jamaican, my feelings are hurt because they tell me I need to eat less curry and I can't have mint tea. I don't know how I'm going to function without my mint tea, but
Oh no mint tea?
No mint tea, at least for 5 years. So, and my curry. But it's,
I was going to say, look, our oxtails, of that sort of in the
oxtail is good, but the curry, no curry chicken, that's
spice itself is the problem.
Yeah.
The curry spice is the problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you poor dear. Because I love me a good curry. Wow, that's okay. You'll have to figure out some other,
I'll be fine. There are lots of other things that I can eat. Things that I found that are on the list that I like. Like I like bok choy. I like cabbage. So there are a lot of things that were superfoods. And with my doctor's office, they've actually provided me with lots of resources that are available. So there's a program called Unite for Her, and I signed up for that. They sent me this great welcome kit with a book about, how to cook, cooking for cancer. They set me up with a nutritionist. So I'm meeting with a cancer nutritionist tomorrow, so I could learn more about that. So I'm taking advantage of all of the resources. Again, this is new, but it's I'm trying to learn as much as I can. You alluded to the fact that I'm always in a book. I've been reading like crazy. So I'm trying my best to be informed and get ahead of this.
I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if next week's hey, Marsha, now is an oncologist.
No.
Add that to your list of stuff. I'll be like, of course she is. Duh. Gosh, wow, Marsha, that's wonderful. And the diet is important. And, even preventive, there's a lot of books out there about preventive care, even for people who have not been diagnosed, of foods that we should, maybe the superfoods that you mentioned might be something to look into as a preventive measure for a better diet to avoid cancer, if that is at all possible. Well, my last question for you would be, for people who are out there and they're hesitant or they're fearful of preventive screenings, what would you say to them?
It's not painful. Things don't hurt. I've been doing this, getting my mammograms for over 10 years. I'm about to tell my age, but it's been over 10 years. And, the first one, of course, is a little scary, especially because back then the equipment wasn't as user friendly. They didn't warm up the plates, but now they warm up the plates, that you get fuzzy robes, and everybody is just so nice, and you're not, sitting there half naked in a cold room. None of that happens anymore. And I would advise get a 3D mammogram and versus a 2D, because you get better pictures, but it doesn't hurt at all. Honestly, the amount of photo shoots that I've had since, my diagnosis. Honestly, I do them in my sleep. At this point, it's not painful. Please do it. 15 minutes of you taking these pictures will save you a lifetime of pain.
I love that. Wonderful words of wisdom. And I'll also add the same for men. Like, get the screenings done. They use a little light anesthesia. They put you out. You don't even know what happened. You wake up about 10 minutes later and they've gotten all the information they need and you don't even know what even happened. So in that regard, Marsha Perry, one of my dear friends and wonderful breast cancer awareness advocate, we are honored that you shared your story with us today. I'm so thrilled you were here. And thanks for being a guest on Motivational Mondays.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.